Hello everybody, welcome back to Cinema Savvy. It is myself, George, bringing you a brand new review, and today I'm going to be attempting to review Drive to Survive Season 6. Yes, the Netflix documentary series covering Formula 1, which is still going strong and is releasing tomorrow at the time of this video coming up on Netflix. All 10 episodes are going to be up there for you guys to watch, to binge through, and I've been very fortunate. I have seen all 10 episodes today. I think this is like the fourth season or third season in a row I've covered this series on the channel. It's become a staple of the sports documentary stuff I follow, and I'm going to try my best to give my very unbiased thoughts on this. Don't let the top fool you. I've got a lot to say. I'm going to be talking about the documentary. I'm going to be talking about previous seasons of Drive to Survive. I'm also going to be talking about Formula 1, the actual sport itself and what it's gone on to be. And to approach a documentary such as this, I am aware that people don't want to know anything about their favourite drivers, about maybe who they're looking forward to seeing across the show. So what I'm probably going to do is segregate this into 10 really small sections where I'm going to maybe go through each team, talk if they're on it much, if they're not on it much, my thoughts on their coverage, and that might make a little bit more sense in a couple of minutes. But as always, I do want to hear from people in the comments below. I want to hear your thoughts on Drive to Survive. Do you like it? Do you not like it? Is it a show you used to watch that you now don't like anymore? And maybe combined with that, your thoughts on Formula 1 and how Formula 1 has gone to be the last couple of years, or maybe it's the last 10, 20 years. I'm very curious. I'm always curious about F1. I know it's an all-time popular high, isn't it? Thanks to a show such as this, and I'm going to do my best to talk about that too. But it is always best to start these reviews giving my thoughts, and looking back at some of the other Drive to Survive videos I've done on the channel, Netflix documentaries, the Braun GP series which came out last year, I adored. Big fan of that. Kind of went on a rant in there saying this is what Drive to Survive needs to be, this is what F1 needs it to be. Safe to say I haven't enjoyed the last few seasons of the show. Again, don't let the top for you. Drive to Survive began as this wonderful, wonderful documentary series where we were able to spend time inside the paddock with the drivers, with engineers, with team principals. We were finally seeing behind the scenes into Formula 1, something we've never been able to do before, something we've never had intricately done across a season. And I've got to say, the first two seasons are two of my favourite seasons of documentary TV. Don't watch a lot of documentary TV, but the first two seasons were incredible. I adored it. I loved it. The third season was fine too. But it hit this crux, and this is maybe where the lines are going to get blurred between the Netflix series and the reality of where everyone's gone. But I feel that Drive to Survive not only lost its identity, but the sport, maybe not this sport, maybe sports documentaries have moved forward in regards to coverage, in regards to better documentaries. Yes, F1's gone stale the last year, certainly, and that'll be reflective, because before someone cries in comments, trust me, I'm telling you, when you get to find out what teams are featured in this, you'll be surprised too. And Drive to Survive is this weird crux where they renewed it for another 2 seasons. And if I'm really honest, I said last year, I'm done, I'm not going to watch this anymore. I guess it's like, I mean, I watch wrestling, don't I? So you can't really judge what I watch. I watch Drive to Survive, I watch wrestling. So, you know, sports entertainment as you will. And the difference is that sports entertainment is then basically what destroyed the sport. All for regulation changes, loads of other things which I can't be bothered to get into because I'm not an F1 channel, I'm a documentary, well, I'm a film channel doing TV, aren't I? And Drive to Survive, to me, has just become this horrible, horrible, horrible PR gimmick. 10 episodes, 10 opportunities for teams to tell everyone how great they are, how there's nothing wrong, how their perspective and how their PR gimmick is strong. And this is where I'm at. And this series in particular, I'd say is better than the last 2 seasons. But it reached this point, and I'm going to massively shout out Verstappen and any other driver that's called this out repetitively in this series. Lewis Hamilton, a few other drivers are mocking the fact that Netflix cameras are everywhere. There's boom mics getting over them, and they're sort of joking, but you can tell they're sort of not at the same time. You've got a great scene of Albon basically summarising Drive to Survive's ideology and how they worship Danny Rick too, where they basically joke about Netflix, no one's more excited to see Danny Rick back than Netflix. That's literally part of an episode, and I kind of agree. You go back to the last series and they had a final montage for Danny Rick's F1 career. yet Sebastian Vettel, the four-time world champion, didn't basically get anything, was gone. So they're the things that sort of aggrieve me. But I also appreciate Drive to Survive that it has become this work of fiction where you have your protagonist, you have your lead characters, you have the same people that pop up. Danny Rick has very much been that of the drivers. Gunther Steiner, of course, has been that for the team principals. Christian Horner, I'm going to have to talk about a little bit later on too. But there are certain characters that are in the show far more than others. I would say at times it's masterful PR. You put the attention of the team on the manager, it distances it away from the drivers, it distances it away from the track and what's going on there. You're only thinking of the manager. And Red Bull's done that better than many others over the last few years, which is why he's always over Sky Sports News and stuff such as that. But I'm going to get to that. And heading into this series of Drive to Survive, I'll be really honest with my thoughts on F1. I think last year is the worst year of my life watching Formula 1. I say watching it. I didn't watch a race in full. I followed it very much through YouTube channels, through journalists. Shout out to Katie Fairman, Matt and Tommy, Rocket Pad Mohawk, Old Ass, loads of journalists, I think Sports Illustrated has some really good articles. So I didn't spend my Sundays around Formula 1 for the first time in so long. And I'll tell you this, it was so much more refreshing. Life was a lot easier. Yes, there was football, but a weight off my shoulders and a look back at, wow, I was a really bit of a twat to my friends picking F1 over socialising and stuff like that. So last year's been a bit of a personal life 180 if I'm being honest, but F1 something that relatives are saying it's such a shame not watching anymore. I had one relative go to Silverstone, which I sort of laughed at, and ironically because it's his first time going there, and it's just something where the sport is hero for me at an all-time low. You can look at the TV broadcasting figures that are dropping off. You can look at the shenanigans that's Las Vegas. You can look at the social growth, stuff like that. I don't care. I care about racing, but the owners care about that stuff, and that's what's declining. We've then got off-field shenanigans. We've got, for some reason unknown to mankind, Andretti not being given a team, and so much going wrong with the sport. So really reviewing this properly now, Drive to Survive was like, okay, let's watch it. I can't tell you meticulously if they've edited scenes because I wasn't watching every race last season. I was still following results. As I said, I was following through other channels. So still aware of the season as a whole, record breaking. I'm just going to kind of kickstart to say, as I mentioned, I think it's his best in early seasons. There's one standout in this series. It's Alpine. Alpine are the only team that I don't think approached this series as a documentary of, we've got a weekend to do a PR move, to tell everyone how great we are, to worship us, to look at our ideologies, look how great our drivers are, look how great our owners are. Alpine is the only team that didn't do that. I guess, respectively, that then goes to show maybe the problems there are at Alpine in terms of them being mismanaged, that they didn't make this a PR gimmick. But I've got to say the Alpine episodes felt like the very early days of Drive to Survive, which was so much better to watch, so much more entertaining. The problem with that is that they get 2 episodes out of 10, and then you're left with 8 others. And I can remember most episodes. I did it in a massive binge. Some episodes stand out more than others. Some I think are repulsive, which I'll talk about, looking at Aston Martin. But it's a really weird one for me to try and do this. Now, I'm not going to do spoilers, but I obviously got to address some behind-the-scenes real-life stuff. Christian Horner is in the show a lot. At the time of recording, he's, I believe, the Red Bull team principal, CEO still. It does make uncomfortable viewing. I can't obviously comment on legal matters, can I? I don't know the legal matters. There's a lot of Dutch media reports. Wonder who's been leaking that to the Dutch media, we'll guess. But there's a lot of stuff that needs to be investigated. Like Mazepin 2-3 years ago, this makes for very awkward viewing, bit different circumstances. But it does make for awkward viewing, especially with Christian Horner, who puts himself on the front page, at the front of cameras as much as he possibly can. There's an opening scene in episode 2 which everybody's going to be sharing clips of, and yeah, I can't really talk about that, and I will say that does make it somewhat awkward. I'm not getting into the legalities, my thoughts, blah 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 blah. You can read the Dutch media's responses for stuff like that. We obviously hope that it comes to a conclusion and justice is done for whatever has happened there. And then we've got a couple of other ones. The obvious one, the fun one, Lewis Hamilton going to Ferrari. Obviously, it's not mentioned, but we do get an entire episode dedicated to Lewis Hamilton signing his brand new Mercedes contract. So that's going to be one that people talk about for a very, very long time. And Toto Wolff has given us an absolute gold dust of a meme to come. But again, I'm sort of segregating away from the spot. I'm going to talk about the 10 teams briefly. And I'm going to go through the episodes. This isn't spoilers, it can't be spoilers, it's based off real life, but I can give my thoughts on how the show presents teams. And I've got to be really careful of how I say some of this. So I'm going to kick start with episode 1, which is the Aston Martin episode, which was quite frankly repulsive. I've seen on my Instagram and Facebook competitions to watch this episode at Aston Martin's factory. No thank you. The fact that a team is willing to share an episode with competition winners at their own factory goes to show what a PR machine this has become. And I just have to say, it is horrible viewing this. Not only, I mean, the entirety of the episode is focused on the first race of the season, and it's all about Lawrence Stroll and Lance Stroll. Fernando Alonso fans, he does pop up later on in the series, and he's given about a minute of screen time in episode 1. But the entirety of the episode is about how great Aston Martin the Strolls are. And to be frank, I almost turned it off and stopped watching it at that point. Aston Martin Aramco Cognizant Formula 1 team are not a good team. They're a despicable team. They have an awful owner. They've got one of the worst drivers in the grid racing for them. And they have one of the best drivers in the grid racing. They're a mercenary for hire who's already talking about moving to another seat next year. And it just brought forward everything I hate about what Drive to Survive's done, what F1's done. They're trying to paint this pretty image of... They go as far as say, as Lance, you've proven your deniers wrong at the end of the episode. This is the first race of the season, by the way. And the episode's them talking about, like, our goal for the year is going to be, we're going to break that top 4. We know what happened there. But there's no mention of the regulations. There's no mention of the cars. There's a few cheap jokes that, they bought all of the Red Bull aerodynamics. There's no mention of the fact that McLaren, Merc, Ferrari's plans have basically failed. They're having to pivot, rebuild, because they can't do this. This show isn't designed for the fans that are the intricate of the sport. It's a PR gimmick, so we're just given this nonsense for 45 minutes about how great Aston Martin. This is a team, by the way. The owners, I've got to be careful how I say this, I guess. There's been stuff in the media about the owner fudging Q4 results the year before on his other Aston Martin brand. There's also details of that branding itself. As to how the Aston Martin F1 team pays real Aston Martin $30 million a year to be called Aston Martin, which is the opposite of how sponsorship works. You then got Aramco coming in, which is the Saudi Arabian government, which representing that would be one of the most despicable, disgusting things a person could do. And it's plastered all over them, their logo, their branding. I think Mercedes turned them down. I think I read other teams turn them down. So, yeah, waving the rights and how great they are. With Aramco involved, no, you just never Newcastle United, if I'm being honest. And following on from that, there's just been drama across drama throughout the year of them. You've got Lance Stroll assaulting whoever the hell that was, the person he pushed when he had his little tantrum and threw the wheel out the car. There's no mention of how awful Lance Stroll is, by the way, in the series. They don't mention that he's the reason they didn't come fourth or maybe even third at this point in time. It is just about how great he was in episode 1. No real investigation to how he broke his arm a few weeks before the season began. Yes, it was an accident, but you can have read into that, and it's not like, we've got details of what happened. Did he just fall over on his bike? Probably. If it's anything like his driving. You had so many controversies at Aston Martin last year, but this episode's going to tell you how great they are. So get through episode 1. Things are going to get better, I promise you. Episode 2 is about AlphaTauri, Christian Horner episode. AlphaTauri have obviously shown a lot in this series. We get them losing De Vries, we get tests, we get Danny Rick being brought back as you'd expect. They get a lot of screen time. In comparison, Red Bull, nothing. And this is where you sort of lose credibility as a documentary series. Your world champions who've gone on to dominate the sport in the most dominant year it maybe has ever seen, certainly since '89. You don't get a singular interview with Max Verstappen, and I think maybe he's in like a reel somewhere where he's at someone's doing something socially. Nothing from Perez, and there's even a point where Horner says in it that Danny Rick is here to do the PR to lighten the burden on Perez. So make of that what you will, but nothing on the main Red Bull team. I mentioned Mercedes have their episode on Lewis Hamilton's new contract. People are going to love that episode for the basis that it's out of date already with Ferrari. You then get the final episode where we don't hear about Aston Martin from episode 1 through to episode 10. We get 5 minutes on Aston Martin at the end of episode 10, them basically saying, we're in a battle with McLaren for fourth. Can we get there? Of course you can. And again, me as a documentary fan would much rather see the highs and lows of a team. Don't give us this bollocks propaganda in episode 1 and then come back 7 episodes later and say nothing. And this is where it's detracted, and I think about things like All or Nothing, Arsenal, for example, looking at football. We can take an entire season spent with one football team. We can look at the highs, the lows that season. We can look at how they develop, how they build, how it's approached, what goes on behind the scenes and what isn't going on behind the scenes. And this is where Netflix have been really left behind. The Brawn GP series essentially did that. Yes, it's sort of 13, 14 years later, but the Brawn GP series did it better. And this is where Drive to Survive sort of died out for me, because it's become a PR gimmick. Everything we're seeing is just utter nonsense. It is the team, you're going to go to this team for a week and let's see how great they are. And I'd much rather follow one team for a season. You saw me moaning about Aston Martin. Give me a year following Aston Martin. Let me see them getting cocky about going second in the championship, dropping down to fifth. Let me see about Alonso scraping podium by podium, absolutely getting everything out of that car, while the idiotic son is getting Q1 knockouts every single week. And yet Netflix is going to say, well, he's proved the doubters wrong. So I'd much rather follow a season as them. People talk about Haas, who have become the celebrities, Gunther Steiner. He's, of course, got his episode, and he's great in it. And it's like the Avengers, yet a portal scene, because Bonotto pops up out of nowhere for some reason as they do some fishing and car journey stuff. So, yeah, there's a lot going on here. Williams, you get a great episode. James Vowles is involved. And I love James Vowles. I think he's got a bright future, and it's really interesting seeing him talk to the camera. He's been a bit more vocal. I mentioned that Alpine have been my standout of the show so far. I mentioned Mercedes. McLaren have a great episode, and it's around Silverstone. And again, it's great seeing how poor they were at the start of the year, and they build on that. And then we get the miraculous podium at Silverstone. But Norris was P4 the week before Silverstone, but they make out he's been bottom for the entire season. So it leaves us in this weird void. And the series, and we have to spend so much time with Vegas too, which was an absolute catastrophe. But I'm in this weird point now where I'm just vexing or ranting. I don't know what it is. But with this show, Ferrari, Fred Vasseur has a great episode. You want to talk comedy? You just get a 5-minute montage of angry Italians saying how awful he is at the start of the Ferrari episode, to be turned as they get a great result elsewhere in the season. And now the Italians will worship Fred Vasseur. And it's a weird one. It's a weird one for me. Again, give me a year following Ferrari. Give me Lewis Hamilton's last dance next year or something. Just give us access to one team for an entire season. It will keep this series going. Change the team every year, like All or Nothing. You don't have to do the same ones. It's just become a really lousy formula. It's become a PR gimmick. It's awful to watch. It's not entertaining anymore. And when it does get good, it then drags. You're getting horribly scripted sequences. Lewis and Toto Wolff having contract talks. It's so blatantly scripted. Just like George signing his Merck contract the other year. This documentary could be so much more. F1 could be so much more. Can't really talk about that though, can I? I'm here to talk about the documentary, and yeah, it just feels like it's sort of like a horse after it's fell at the Grand National. They're just waiting to put a bullet through its head. That's what this show has become for me. And until they do that, it's going to keep going. I'm probably going to keep watching it. Is it going to get past next season? I don't know. As I said, I'm all for the concept of a series following one team. Give me Williams, I mentioned already. Give me Aston Martin. Just give me a team for it. It'd be so much more entertaining, and it'd be so much better to bring fans in. You can actually give time to the engineers and the other people involved that aren't just the team principals. There's so much potential, and it's just typical that everyone's wasting that. So that's going to round out this review. A weird one to do. I might have got a bit carried away in pieces, but you know, it's been a weird year for Formula One. It's been a pretty bad year for Formula One. Am I excited for the new season? No. I'm excited for 2025, yes, and I cannot wait to see what they do next year. So that's going to round up for today. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Take care.